So let's discuss ILIs as a request of a user called Sean. So this is a shout out, and let's begin. So NI base, they're extremely contemplative individuals. Many philosophers, people who really are withdrawn and aloof and tend to spend their time in their heads, tend to be like ILIs, especially if it's more on the logical side, because ILIs can be that way too. So contemplative, great at spotting different patterns of information, different patterns that other people might not solve. Great problem solvers, great critics of information, able to see the dots, able to connect the dots that others might miss. Tend to be stuck in their heads. Great at foreseeing different events that might proceed. Excellent in doing that. So a very good long-term vision for things. Not impulsive type. It's a very calculating type in the sense where they know how things might develop into the future. So that's kind of it. I mean, that's what they are. They tend to be more aloof, withdrawn, more almost. They're like, it's gonna be like a meme, but they're like INTJ stare, where they kind of like lost. Like they look at you, but they're staring at you, just lost in the fucking head. That's kind of what NI base is like. As funny as that sounds. So we have that defined. Then we have TI demonstrative, and this is going to be basically no different than that of SLI. They're very logically consistent individuals, great at operating within logical frameworks, and great at dealing with linear information. So that's really it. They can be pedantic and consistent. Now, the pedantism, though, comes from a different element, and this is going to be TE. Because people confuse with TI and TE, they think TI is pedantic. The reality is that TE is super pedantic, and ILI is probably the most pedantic of all types. When I'm saying pedantic, I'm saying in terms of information. They're literally the critic. So I've had so many discussions with ILIs where I would generalize. ILIs, it's a hit and miss with ILIs for me when I discuss with them stuff, when I discuss stuff with them, because they can get annoyed because I generalize shit a lot when it comes. I remember discussing like women and men and the differences, and kind of putting people in boxes, and obviously I've had some ILIs not react very well to it, calling me an aristocratic asshole. So that doesn't always work out. But they're very critical of information, extremely accuracy focused, great at gathering information, great at troubleshooting, amazing at going through loads of information quickly to know what's true, what's not, and being accurate with the information. So those people can be extremely hard to argue with because, again, logical consistency, but they're also very critical of information. So they can be extremely pedantic. If you generalize and make statements like I do oftentimes, you're fucked. Rest in fucking peace. It's over. But okay, so let's go. So we have TE, right? So that's what makes them pedantic. Let me see. Then it's going to be, I think, role, right? It's going to be role, obviously, SI. I really have nothing to say about SI oftentimes, which probably makes SI users feel unappreciated. But so as a role, they can be quite in touch with their internal sensory world and how they feel about shit, the comfort level and stuff, but they might not be great at producing it. Again, it's not at the forefront of their personality or their focus. So let's move on to more juicy details. Then we have polr, and this is going to be interesting. So FE polr, right? They're no different than SLIs again in this case. Probably more detached even, because SLIs they are FE polar, but they're still a sensory type, so they have this down to earth groundedness. With ILIs, it's not like that. It's more tricky because they're NI base. They're very critical and they're very like aloof, withdrawn individuals or floating in the fucking head. But they're also FE polar. So ILIs can be extremely dry, can be extremely disconnected from emotional expression. I'm not saying they won't smile or they're not going to crack jokes, because that's also possible. I'm just saying a strong reaction, strong emotional reaction, it's not going to be processed, it's not going to be externalized. Okay, so remember that. They can be quite They can seem serious. They can seem like that loner type who's extremely intelligent but very critical of people, critical of information, and very dry, very disconnected, very detached. And I mean, I remember interacting with ILIs, and I consider I'm not like a saint, you know. Sometimes I can be a dick. Like I've had people get offended by the way that I speak, but I'm still more in touch with with people that way. And when I talk to, like, I remember talking to some ILIs, and like, Jesus Christ, I would ask them a question, like a basic question. There's one dickhead, and he would just like act like a jerk, you know. Like I'm sure it wasn't on purpose, but like the way he just said it, it's just like, whoa, man. Because they might not even mean it. It's not that they're bad people that mean to sound like dickheads or to they're just not very approachable in that sense. So they might convey information in a very matter of fact, and you might kind of be a bit put off by it. It's no different than people are put off by me when I'm like if I polling, you know. Like again, it's I understand that, I don't blame them, but with many ILIs I get along quite well. So it depends. Obviously, it's all depends on the individual. But so we have FE polar. So not very good in very dry. Can be extremely dry, extremely disconnected. I don't mean this as an offense, but unironically, most ILIs I know, or even most NI bases, are on the autistic spectrum. So they showcase autistic characteristics. I've seen that pattern with ILIs tend to. I know one ILI who has autism. Great guy. So, yeah, it might be something that's shared, you know. So those kind of characteristics. So not very good at evoking emotional atmosphere. Not very good in going with the flow of emotional atmosphere. Not really interested in evoking that strong emotional reaction. So let's go further. Then we have we have SC, and it's suggestive. So suggestive SC is quite interesting. So they ILIs being NI base. If you polar, they can be so detached and so like focused on their own mental world. And I base they're very focused on their own mental map and their how they might contemplate uh, and stuff like that. And SC is the opposite of that, obviously, you know. So they're not very grounded individuals and can suffer from inertia, basically inability to act quick. They might be so stuck in their heads and focus on analyzing pieces before acting, to the point where they're stuck in this almost analysis paralysis when they should act but they don't because they're just stuck in the process. So inertia, they can be quite demotivated to act. They might need a push, they might need motivation, and someone to really ground them, to keep their feet on the ground as much as possible. And not to say that they'll never be like an SC value, like a high SC value in type, but you don't want them. It's kind of like a balloon. I think of NI bases like a balloon. My job as an SE base is to make sure that this balloon doesn't fucking fly away. I need to pull it and pull it just enough where it's kind of closer to the ground. So that's the kind of point. How this is how you should deal with NI bases. So they need to kind of be grounded more so than not. Because once they go into I'm a philosopher stuck in the fucking basement, inertia, not engaging in the physical surrounding world, it's not good. So for an ILI, they need to try to engage in the physical world. And with SC suggestive, they seek it in people. So they want to also improve it, and they kind of enjoy help and being pushed by others the right way. I'm not. They can be extremely stubborn. Just because they're SC seeking doesn't mean that they will enjoy being pushed by everyone. So remember that. So they can be very motivated by other people, being pushed. For example, the dual can be good at it, and that is what they require. I've seen some SC suggestive can also have almost like a coping quality to it, meaning from what I've seen and experienced, I would say that there's almost this insecurity, especially if it's like a maybe male ILI. There might be, not saying that it always happens, because so many, but I've seen some SC suggestive even IEIs where there's this insecurity of SC where they almost compensate. They try to be something they are not by acting out and stuff. So also remember, SE suggestive, while they are suffering from inertia and lack of action, they are not completely incapable of using aggression or using force. Remember that. So SE suggestive can use force and can use aggression, especially when they're when they're losing control. They're very angry and annoyed. You might see the bursts of SE. So remember that, okay, guys? And so that's it, right? Let's go further. So mobilizing. Mobilizing to me from ILI is quite simply they can have so we assume, people assume that because they're FE polar and they're not very expressive emotionally, that they're very dead inside. For example, someone might look at me and think, if I'm someone puts me and an ILI side by side, and they might look at me and think, damn, this guy is way more emotional because I express way more. So that's the assumption. But the reality is that ILIs have can have a quite a deep emotional landscape. But it's FI, so they don't really show it to people. It's not like if I express my feelings, my anger, whatever, it's expressed for everyone. Even though I have such shitty access to what's inside, I'm still expressing something. So my expression can seem bigger than it is internally. For ILIs, it's the opposite. For them, it's for what you see in front might not be what they feel inside. So inside can be a huge emotional, a lot of feelings, a lot of emotionality, but issues with expressing that outwardly. So strong reactions to things, they can have extremely strong reactions to things, likes and dislikes. They can go quite offended, even attached to people. So again, treat them with respect. Treat them with respect because they can be quite sensitive in that way, even though you might not think that. That's to remember, and because it's mobilizing, it can be try hard. It can be extremely intense sometimes, but sloppy, so the FI is going to be unstable. And then we have and I ignoring, of course, they're not really interested in. It makes sense. They're not really interested in exploring novelty, exploring different possibilities of action, or different possibilities of going about things. They're very singular. They're so great at having a path, knowing how it's going to go, just vision forward. So that's what they're not going to pay attention to any. They're going to ignore it. Then we have that's it. So I hope I did justice to ILIs. Hope I didn't fuck it up. And from my experience with ILIs, I would say that's pretty correct. So another thing is that they're quite individualistic types. Let's not forget they also belong to Gamma Quadra. So very, very individualistic and extremely pragmatic and focused on results. So while they might not show as many like ambitious and driven qualities, they still might, by the way, but maybe less so than like an LIE. They still will be extremely individualistic, extremely pragmatic individuals who will work on all those things. So that's it for now. So see you guys. ILIs,